All right, before I make my own comments, can I please allow the members first to go if there are any comments?
No, I have questions. You can comment and I'll ask questions after you.
All right. First, I see that your payables have dropped quite significantly. I don't know if this is an indication of the level of completeness of the payables that we are reflecting here. And can you please comment on that?
Okay.
And secondly, that given the fact that you now have a lot of resources that you didn't use at the time that you were supposed to have used them, and your cash and cash equivalents have been sitting at a fairly higher amount, were you efficient in using this money to maximize its benefit and effective use to the benefit of the owners of this department? Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to take all the questions with your permission, Chairperson, and then just
Chair, if you're looking at your statements of performance, we have a 21.6 million surplus, and we are surrendering 19.4 million. So I would like to get a comfort from the CFO if this 2 million, it looks like is it covering the 16% that we did not achieve in the performance information? Is it projects that we are rolling forward? Is it enough for the 16% that we did not achieve this year?
Okay.
Chair, I've got two questions. My first is on the payables. How did you consider the completeness of the amount? And my second question is a little bit bigger, around the new contract of the new building. We'll see in the financials that it talks about, the saving does talk a little bit about the postponement of moving into the new building, which was due to happen in May. So I want to know, on this contract, when are we due to move into the new building? Because we're sitting here in July and we still haven't moved into the new building. So I'm a little bit concerned that if we were to move in, we're not incurring fruitless and wasteful expenditure by paying for this building and the new building. So what is the new occupation date? How have we mitigated the risk of fruitless and wasteful expenditure? And linked to that, do you anticipate a saving going through during the year because we haven't started paying, on this new building, or at least for 2 months of the new financial year?
Okay, thanks, Chairperson. On the completeness of payables, I did indicate here that one of the reasons the financial statements had to be adjusted had to do, with the payables. So I'm sure Auditor General is also going to add on that. We are very much comfortable because we looked at the creditors that we paid subsequent to the year end, and then we got back to see that we had actually provided for them. And as to whether we are comfortable, as to why the payables have decreased, remember I had indicated that we've got a new senior manager who's basically hands-on now. In the past, we used to outsource a lot of our work to service providers, but now we've got, we've built a very capable finance unit, and the PFM Act requires us to pay our creditors within 30 days, and we are making sure that we are complying with that, and we are on a journey towards making sure that we comply with that. Now, on the new building, as to why we have not yet moved to the new building, when we were ready to move, we realized that there were health hazards. So there was, what is this thing in the ceiling? Something that when people inhale, it could damage their lungs. So, we were therefore advised that, by the health, I think the risk section, they advised us that, no, we cannot move in there until that has been sorted out. Now, we got a report 2 weeks ago that they should have finished, sorting everything, and the building should be ready for us to move in the next 3 months. I would like to highlight that there is not going to be any fruitless and wasteful expenditure because we had not made a commitment of paying the, so we were only going to move in the next 3 months, and we should be fine. On the surplus that was raised by one of the members, indicating where you had highlighted that about 30% we had not yet achieved. Yes, we do believe that as we calculated very carefully, and we engaged National Treasury in terms of how much we'd like to surrender, and therefore we're very comfortable that our strategy in terms of moving forward, and modernizing our processes, moving away from the paper-based in order to make sure that we service our clients and our stakeholders effectively and efficiently. We've budgeted properly, and it should be taken care of then. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any comments from the AG around this, given the trials and tribulations that you might have had with regards to adjustments and all of that which happened right at the beginning of your audit and towards the finalization stage?
Chair, on the AG side, we must commend that this has been an improvement from the prior year. The prior year we had many problems in terms of finalizing documentation, getting cooperation from the department. Personnel were consistently on leave, but in this round of audit, documentation flow was much more better. Cooperation was as improved as the CFO has mentioned. In terms of completeness of those payables, we can also confirm to our testing that we've done a substantive approach, and we're comfortable in terms of the reflection of the payables on the accounts.
I guess it is in order then that given this level of improvement that is being applauded to by the AG, that we also acknowledge that and thank you, and we would like to encourage other departments to work in the same manner to bring the credible information to this audit committee.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair, just a follow-up question from me. I'm sorry, I'm a bit stuck on this contract on the new building. I mean, having looked at the contract and being briefed a couple of months ago by the CFO, I think the cost is about R1 million a month. The department was due to move in there in May, and I mean, our year it's going to be, postponed by another further 3 months, which is going to result in about R5 million worth of saving. So I want to know from management, what is the intention? What do they want to do with this money, the saving? Are they going to return it back to National Treasury? I know it's a contentious issue, but either return it back to National Treasury and let them redeploy the money to build schools in the Eastern Cape, or are they going to apply for environment, or what is management's intention, considering we have now the deadline coming with the adjustment budget process?
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Through you. Okay, Chairperson. Remember, I had indicated that we've got a new manager who's going to be in charge of driving the modernization in the department. So some of the projects that we could not undertake last year, we're going to undertake now. So they are going to be accelerated. So for instance, at this point in time, I've had a discussion with her in terms of what we're going to do. We're supposed to do business process mapping. We're supposed to design the technical architecture of our department so that we would understand the IT solution, that we would use. So now those involve going out on tender for some of them, and the 5 million saving is going to take care of this. We're not going to take it back to Treasury. We're going to use it towards improving service delivery for our clients and our stakeholders.
Yes, Chair, I have a follow-up question. I would like to inquire from management, AG and the internal audit, if we don't have any outstanding litigation and contingencies. And if there's any, why are these things not shown in the financial statements?
Okay. Through you, Chairperson, I think when you go to the policies for how we prepare our financial statements, you'll see on page 39 that we include contingent liabilities in the disclosure notes to the financial statements when it's possible that economic benefits will flow from the department. Because remember, we can't put them in the annual financial statement. We can't recognize them as a liability because a liability is a current obligation for, for economic benefits that are going to flow out of an organization. So therefore, we have not reflected them, we have not disclosed them anyway because we don't have any contingency at this point in time. And this was thoroughly audited by the Auditor General, so we're fine.
Chair, from our side, in terms of the contingencies, concurring with what the CFO has said, in the prior years, there were some issues highlighted regarding litigations and contingency as a result of some of the services that were not performed in terms of the grant and some litigation that were experienced by some disgruntled service providers. In this instance, we've done quite a thorough, extensive subsequent testing of potential litigation, external confirmations with some of the key lawyers that they've used in in terms of the department, and we're comfortable to reflect, as the CFO has indicated, that in terms of disclosure, what is being disclosed is in terms of the completeness, and there weren't any undisclosed terms of contingencies or any serious litigations.
I want to add something, Chair. I would like to request maybe the committee to have this item as a standing agenda item in the following audit committee meetings.
Thank you for that. Maybe let me also that takes us to the next item, which is the report on predetermined objectives. And I see that this item is to be presented by the CAE. And coupled with that is a number of suggestions that were put forward by the members earlier regarding the other reports that they want to see in this audit committee. And please, once you have presented that one, if you could indicate what you are going to do about the reports that were requested, so that we, as the audit committee, are able to see the entire picture of what we expect to see from the CAE's office with regards to the audit reports.
Thank you, Chair. This report actually is not from the Internal Audit Office. It's from the AG. It's an excerpt from their management report. So I would hand over to Kiran just to take you through it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As indicated, in terms of the predetermined objectives, currently as the Auditor General, we do not issue an opinion on the predetermined objectives. This isn't just an extract in terms of the issues that came out of this year's management letter. We report accordingly in the management letter. Just some key issues to note: the department has improved substantially in terms of it has achieved 84% of its critical objectives. So hence 21 of the 25 targets were achieved in the current financial year. And I think this is the effort that management has put in. In a lot of the issues we picked up last year was that the objectives were in some cases have become much more smarter. Realignment in terms of priority areas was key. Allocation of resources to the critical programs has also been identified as a key improvement. And also they've appointed a dedicated person to manage the performance information, which is crucial in these departments. This person is working within the DG's office. So we found that in terms of information and getting the information was much more easy this time around, and hence we could report seamlessly in terms of the objectives. But one mustn't get fooled in terms of where we are. I think progression is always something that can be made, but sustainability is important. What we have highlighted to the CFO and her team, and also the strategic management that's placed in terms of dealing with performance management issues, was to set up a framework that specifically deals with performance management, a sustainable framework in terms of controls and how to implement those in a sustainable manner, so that going forward the department is able to achieve the 100%. And that talks to the savings which the audit committee has debated over the last few minutes in terms of the savings that we achieve. Is it linked to non-delivery in terms of service? So hence I feel that will be a critical, important control that they are putting in terms of the DG's office. So we commend the department in setting up and best practicing in terms of setting up systems that are robust enough to monitor and track performance information.
All right, thank you very much for that. But maybe before I allow you to proceed to your audit report, I think there was a point that was made earlier about the CAE responding to what she is going to do about the other standing items that are requested by this committee.
Chair, I think for this particular meeting, there wasn't too much progress in our unit, but I think going forward, we will try and put all our reports to come through on a timely basis. So that I think when we're looking at our resourcing, we'll also make sure that at least we structure our audits such that they coincide with the reporting to this committee.
All right, thank you. Can we allow you, the AG, then to proceed to the report of the Auditor General?
Okay, thank you, Chair. We obviously notice of time. Thank you for allowing us to present our audit report in regard of the Prime Service Government Department. In respect of the 13-14 financial year, we are pleased to inform members of the committee that the financial statements fairly present in all material respect the financial position of Prime Services Government Department as at 31st March 2014. Chair, to you, I'll take the report as read. And in terms of the normal reporting structure of our report, it follows in terms of the responsibility of the accounting officer and us as the Auditor General. However, I would like to just reflect in terms of some of the key matters that have come out of the audit, which we've highlighted in terms of the report. While these have not modified our audit report, I think it's only causal that the audit committee is aware of some of the matters that have come to light during the audit. I think two matters have been touched upon by the committee, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but two important issues were the adjustments to the financial statements. After the submission on 31st May, there were some adjustments, key adjustments made in terms of disclosure, and that related mainly to related party disclosure, accruals, and provisions. And those were key areas that we picked up that were adjusted subsequent to 31st of May. Schedules were prepared and quite an extensive discussion were held with management. We are pleased to say that management adjusted those, and hence we find ourselves in a position where these have been taken into account and presented as is in terms of the financials. What we do recommend is that we've put in some measures together, working with management in terms of how we can resolve these situations going forward in terms of the new financial year. I think they've put together an action plan to try and, as indicate, capacitate the unit, but also come up with a sustainable framework in terms of resolving these matters. And also from these standing agenda items which will help resolve that, we don't wake up at the end to try and resolve in terms of these unadjusted adjustments coming at 31st May. I think they'll be proactive enough to monitor these that are coming through on a quarterly basis, and also to this committee, highlight any red flags so that come here in that our financials are presented fairly and as minimum as possible adjustments can be made by us as the Auditor General. Other two matters I think we talked about was the performance information. They've put in some processes, but also highlighting again that there were some significant adjustments made subsequent to 31st of May, which we highlighted. And a lot of those were in terms of the grant and in terms of the beneficiaries. The numbers there didn't tie up as we'd like to, weren't complete. And these were subsequently identified by us. Management have subsequently, as indicated, rectified those and have reported them in terms of the performance information timelessly. Another area I think just to give them, which is comfort and sort of discomfort, is procurement and contract management, which has been curtailed. As you've seen, the irregular and fruitless expenditure has come down, but there were some deficiencies that we picked up in terms of declaration of interest, which is a key component. And in terms of the AG, we do quite extensive amount of procedures around those areas, because in terms of procurement and in terms of related parties and in terms of the PFMA violations. So those are areas which still we feel can improve on, and the department has moved in terms of that space. Other than that, Chair, I think that is in terms of our report to this committee for the 13-14 financial year.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any comments and issues from the members?
No, Chair.
All covered. Thank you very much. Thank you, AG, and thank you for, I wouldn't say thank you for the opinion, because I'm sure this is a genuine opinion that you actually got on the set of financial statement. Can I then move to the next item, which is the draft audit committee report? This report is entirely within our own control. What I want to highlight in there is that given the comments that have been made by the AG regarding a couple of issues that came to the attention of the audit committee, we are planning to modify this report a bit to add particularly around the issue of controls around the IT environment, because we felt that the review by the Auditor General right at the end is just not adequate for our own purposes as the audit committee, and therefore we will modify the report as such to reflect those issues. But other than that, it's our report and we'll be able to make adjustments to it appropriately soon. Maybe as a concluding remark, let me also thank the inputs that have been made by my fellow audit committee members to this document, and it's our collective document that we will refine and present. Are there any other matters that perhaps the audit committee would like us to consider? I remember there were additional matters that you brought forward. Just maybe in summary, I see that we've run out of time.
Yeah, I think, Chair, those have been addressed. We were going to talk about the investigations, but the CAE did give us feedback about those reports and the investigations, at what stage they are. And I think just going forward again, we want on the agenda standing item for internal audit and also the litigation report.
All right, so the date of the next meeting is the 27th of October, which is as reflected on the agenda. And given the fact that we've covered the contents of today's agenda, I would like to request, well, first of all, thank every person present here for the participation and the level of effort that you put in. and adjourn this meeting until the next time. I therefore, please remember that we have an in-committee meeting immediately after this, and for that, I would like to ask the other members, except the Auditor General, to stay behind, to leave and leave the Auditor General behind so that we can be able to discuss this matter. Thank you.
You know what we can do? We can just use the things to discuss.
All right, thank you for being present. I just wanted to raise the issues that we are going to discuss in that in-committee meeting and not necessarily go through discussing them. The major concern that we have is the fact that the DG, the accounting officer of this department, is not present. And for that, I would like to take it up upon myself as the chair to link up with him and find a way of addressing this matter so that going forward, we have him present here and whatever resolutions are taken here is going to take care of that. The second issue is the issue of the competency of the internal CAE, given all the kind of issues that were highlighted by the discussions and whether or not we are comfortable with that. And I really would like us to engage further to find a way of addressing the competency levels and dealing with that issue, perhaps from an investigative point of view, to see if he's fit, she's fit for the job, and what then next needs to be done, be it development or any other strategy that can be used to deal with that. Is there any other matter, perhaps?
Chair, I think just from our side, I know we're a little bit pushed for time and the agent needs to run off to catch a plane to Switzerland. Just from the AG's view, quickly and briefly, what is your assessment of the finance function? The CFO is now there for 8 months. Do you see a real turnaround beyond the financial statement preparation?
Yeah, Chair, to you, I think where the CFO has played a pivotal role is in terms of developing clear and concise KPIs. They're putting specific training programs. They've capacitated to some extent some of the key vacancies that were missing in the past. So at the senior level and even at the middle management level, they've managed to capacitate themselves in getting the right quality of staff, and together with the training, and I think the management of the KPIs will in future put them in good stead going forward. However, we must also be concise is that in the prior years there were a lot of consultants that were assisting, and I think the CFO mentioned that, and you see in terms of those payables that you mentioned coming through dropped, and some of those were to a large extent used in the department in prior years. That has come down drastically with the uptake in terms of filling those critical vacancies and those plans that they've put in place. So going forward, and I think also with the development of this critical financial control framework that they've developed, and also from an AG perspective, we've engaged with the CFO to be sustainable, that we meet them on a quarterly basis to see how they're measuring against this critical financial control framework that they're putting in place.
Thank you very much, and I think that's the end of our in-committee discussion. Perhaps we can have our members back so that we can engage with the audience. Thank you.
Very much. Emma, again, is going to help us with the questions that she's been receiving. And thank you for the questions, except there's one. I got to tell you, but I'll tell you about the question later. Okay, Emma, please deal with the questions.
Thank you, Chair, for the diligence that you run the meeting. I'm sure we've all learned from the simulated session. There's been a number of questions that have been raised around convening a meeting without the accountable person of an institution. The DG was not present at the meeting. I mean, what are the implications of continuing with the audit committee without somebody who's ultimately accountable for an institution? What are your comments, Chair?
Well, thank you for that question. In fact, it's one of the items that we raised quite sharply, and I've taken it upon myself as the chair to follow it up with the DG as to why he was not in this meeting. And the aim is that depending on the outcomes of those discussions, we will escalate it even to the executive authority, because we believe that it's a very critical aspect of not only just for the mere presence, but also whatever resolution is taken in this meeting to find an owner that is going to oversee its implementation in the department and look at the fact that nobody knows where he is. He has not even sent an apology and nobody knows where the DG is. We really feel that it's an area that's short-changing us big time as this audit committee. On the other hand, we didn't want, having incurred all the expenditure that has been incurred to bring us here to have this discussion, to say we are going back home because the DG is not here. We felt that the deliberations that will happen here will enhance and enrich the issues that will be carried maybe by the CFO being the next highest level person within this discussion to the DG so that they can actually get some attention. But we are equally displeased with the fact that the DG is not here.
But in a practical sense, in a real life situation, what advice would you have for the members that are here? Should you go ahead with the meeting and the meeting is not duly constituted from a quorum point of view? What advice can you give us? Is this something that you escalate to the minister? How do you deal with it?
Well, I wouldn't say the meeting does not correlate because the number of members present, the members of the audit committee, was sufficient to proceed with the meeting. But the problem is that the people who are the responsible officials that should be present in this meeting were not here. In fact, in particular, the DG. And from our side, I think it would be important to approach it from a governance perspective, to indicate the seriousness of this transgression to the executive authority, and the fact that unless stern action is taken to deal with this issue and once and for all, we will not even be able to, I will not even be able to continue as the chair, because it puts me and the credibility of this committee at stake. And it is just a once-off grant that we will give to them in order to be able to rectify the situation. But if it goes beyond this, then we will be even prepared to take more drastic measures to get them into action.
The reporting lines of the CAE came up quite a lot yesterday in terms of the appropriate reporting lines. Today we've seen the reporting line of the CRO, which is another management assurance function, being brought to question again. But in this instance, if the CRO reports to the CAE, as the audit committee chair, is it not adequate that that person is in the meeting to field any question or table, whatever work activities that have been brought forward by the risk department?
That is exactly the reason why we raised that issue very sharply, because we felt that the person who should be presenting that the CRO report is actually the CRO himself. And that leaves the CAE to be that independent person that we can, from time to time, focus our attention to as the audit committee, to give us assurance that what is coming to us is a credible report. But if it is channeled through her, then it puts her in a very difficult situation to be able to respond to us about the credibility of the report, because it's a report basically that's being presented by her. So that is why we wanted that line to be drawn quite clearly, so that the CRO reports to this committee, we interrogate the CRO, and as and when we need assurance about certain issues in the report, we can then rely on the CAE to assist us in that space.
Emma, I think just to add, we didn't get to it in our meeting, but what we wanted to discuss in the in-committee was the reporting line of the CRO at our department. So we all know internal audit needs to look at the risk management function. So it becomes very difficult from an independence perspective of the CAE reviewing the risk management when they're actually responsible for risk management. There's a self-review threat or self-interest threat that would emerge. So our recommendation would be perhaps the CRO either needs to move to another DDG or report directly to the DG themselves to take out that independence issue arising.
Okay. In terms, you discussed briefly, fraudulent activities within one of the reports. What advice would you give in terms of instances where the DG themselves and the minister are, rumored to be or alleged to be involved in fraudulent activities? How should that be dealt with?
Yeah, that's the most difficult one. And I think, though, one of the responsibilities that we take upon ourselves, knowing very well the situation that we got ourselves into as members of the audit committee, is our responsibility to the public. And we believe that the Auditor General would perhaps provide us with a very starting point where we can indicate to the Auditor General and maybe even seek advice from the Office of the Auditor General as to how we can proceed with that particular matter, it being a sensitive matter. And it might actually need us to have that discussion in an in-committee meeting where we can seek that advice from the AG, and depending on the advice that we get, we can find a suitable way of dealing with that. But it is not an issue that will be left and swept under the carpet. We will find a way of dealing with it so that it's addressed and it's resolved.
A question to the CFO and the Auditor General. Irregular expenditure is always an issue that is extensively discussed, mainly at year end when the numbers are being finalized. What processes do you think should be in place throughout the year to ensure that there is proactive management of irregular expenditure?
Okay. Thanks, Emma. I think the first thing is to, King Tree always gives guidance in terms of ethical leadership because it starts at the top. So, so when you've got ethical leadership, then you've got a head of supply chain who knows, and also generally, especially in the public sector, in the governing departments, you'd have the CFO chairing the BAC, the Bid Adjudication Committee. So it's important for those officials to know that they've got support of leadership in terms of how to do these things, that there is no pressure. They can, be able to run the supply chain process properly and be able to say, no, we cannot, this was not done properly, and therefore this bid cannot, be awarded. Now, also, the important thing is that throughout the year, the cost center managers who would basically be your mentor, that there is training, that they get to understand, supply chain processes, what their responsibility is, they are in the bid specification committee, and that if there is to be, and that when the bid has been evaluated and the tender has been awarded, they must understand that up to 15% you can have a variation. Above, if there's not been a deviation, it becomes irregular. So it's educating them so that they understand what irregular expenditure is. And then there has to be consequences for irregular expenditure. So if you are in an organization where there's no consequence, people have irregular expenditure, then, people don't take it seriously. But when they know that there's going to be consequences, then they, they know what they're supposed to do. So it's ethical leadership, it's also training and making sure that you tighten this.
AG?
Yeah, I think not only from the AG side, but I think from an audit side, I think that these can be built into program activities that can be built in either through the AG processes, and depending on the size of the organization, AG come in and do interim reviews, but also from the internal audit space. One can put in terms of their project plans, because these areas tend to be mainly focused around supply chain, HR, and those are some of the key areas. So if those are done proactively, even together with, you find that there's a lot of organizations that have proactive fraud components that deal with these matters. So areas in supply chain regarding pre-quote system, tendering systems, identified up front, then mechanisms are built in where it's rather proactive rather than coming towards the end and finding only when the Auditor General comes in, why have we extended contracts or we've breached policies and procedures. So it's together with doing proactive audits, I think, and number two is also what the CFO has mentioned, the proactive training. So continuous education around codes of ethics, key areas like declaration of interest, and also understanding key policies and procedures which define irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
Okay. Just a last question to the members of the committee, not just the chair. In your in-committee, you had a discussion with the AG around the competency of the CAE, or the internal audit function. I mean, is that, is that best practice to engage the AG around the competence of the CAE? I'm removing the function itself. Is that something that municipalities or departments should be doing, or it's something that should generally be taken to the DG, for example?
Emma, I think to comment on that, I think a lot of people might argue that the AG doesn't bring a lot of value adds in the audit. However, I think the AG has a lot of knowledge and experience within its organization itself, and you need to tap on that. So I think as much as we were asking what within the competencies of the finance function is, or the CAE, they sit on a range of organizations and they can add value and say, well, at this organization, this is what happens. This is what the internal audit function is doing. This is where the maturity level is. So I think what we were trying to get out of that is to say, where would the improvements be? What have you seen elsewhere? How can you help this organization move forward? We know it's not your role, but bring that knowledge and that experience and share with us so we can move forward. I think that's where we need to tap on the AG and say, yes, you can't contravene independence, and obviously we don't want you to be evaluating people in the organization, but help us to help this organization move forward and just share the knowledge.
Any other comments?
I agree with that. That was the purpose, not to get the AG to take a role in that space.
Okay. I think really those were mainly the newer questions that came through. Some of the questions that came were already fielded earlier on and yesterday mainly. So I will just end it there. Thank you.
I've been looking